Hi, everyone. Today, let's talk about variations because I've had a couple people, one person on YouTube and one person in my public Facebook group, ask if I know a way around the limit of 400 variations that Etsy lets us put on one listing. And my reaction to both was, what the heck would you need 400 variations for? That's insane. People are not going to put up with that and stick with it long enough to buy from you. It's too confusing. So anyway, somebody actually did answer me and said, because I said, I genuinely do not understand why you would need that many variations. Can someone explain this to me? And someone answered and said, well, I sell embroidered patches and we have the thread, the finish of the patch, the color of the patch, the size of the patch, the font, all this kind of stuff that goes into making one little patch. And people have to tell us that information. And I'm thinking, okay, that makes sense. However, you might be able to sell more of those if you break those out into separate listings. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, because 6 years ago, I did a video. Had to go back and find it. 6 years ago, I did a video when I took my colored butterflies that I had all in one listing with multiple variations. I broke them out into separate listings, and I tried this for multiple listings on Etsy. I tried it for multiple listings on my website. And every time I broke them out into separate listings where I had one color per listing, people bought more across the board. And there are reasons for that. A lot of it is psychological. A lot of it is just merchandising. But let's talk about it, because I think that if you do have a listing that's got that many variations, you're probably chasing a lot of people away. And people are just going to go and buy the simpler thing where they don't have to think about it. And you might be selling through that listing thinking, oh, I'm doing well. Oh, I have a bestseller badge. Well, the bestseller badge is only bestseller relative to your shop as far as we can figure out. So if you have a bestseller badge, that's great, but you might be able to sell more of them if you break it out into separate listings. And even without a bestseller badge, you might be making more money. Okay. So the first thing about this is that too many choices are overwhelming for customers. And if people cannot compute, if it doesn't compute, they see all these choices. If they can't visualize what it looks like, if they can't figure out what they're going to be getting, they will not purchase. Okay, they're going to say, I have to think about this, I'll come back. And they won't come back. So too many choices is overwhelming. You want to keep this down to the minimum choices that you have to in order to sell to someone. All right. The thing that you need to think about when you're deciding how to break these out into other listings is, what is the feature about this that makes people buy it? All right, so for me with the edible butterflies, it was the color, because people would search for purple edible butterflies or pink edible butterflies or something because they're matching a color theme. So when I had everything nested in one listing with lots and lots of variations, people would not necessarily buy other than the one that was in the main picture, because they could see that. They saw that picture, even though I had other pictures in the listing. I had pictures of other colors in the listings. That main picture, when they're on the Etsy search result page and they're scrolling past, if someone has searched for purple and they see a green butterfly, because that's the main photo that I've put in, they're going to keep scrolling past it. And when Etsy has variations, they use those for keywords to match for searches. So if I had purple in there as a variation, even though the main photo is green, it would come up in searches for purple. But like I said, customers are going to see that green picture and just keep going. All right, so matching the color to the image is actually a very strong psychological signal to people that this is a good listing for them. It's what they're looking for, and you definitely want to look at that. If color is your primary selling feature, and you have to, this is going to be different for everybody. So color might be, let's say you're selling jewelry, it could be the stones. If you're selling candles, it could be the fragrance. There's reasons why people buy specific things. You need to figure out for your own product, what is the main selling feature? What is the reason someone's buying this? And that should be what you're featuring in your listing photos and targeting for the keywords for that listing. What I would suggest is that if you have listings like that where you have so many variations, it's nuts, go and see what's actually selling, because my guess is that you're going to start seeing patterns. And once you see those patterns and you identify what is it about this that makes people buy this thing. First of all, are they just buying the things that are in the main photos? Are they buying that color combination that you have? Are they buying that font that you have? If that's the case, you might want to break it out so that one listing has one font. that takes away one of the variations that you have to worry about, and it gives you room to put other stuff in those variation slots. Are they only buying a specific shape? Are they buying a specific pattern? Just, you have to make those decisions for yourself. But once you see why people are buying something and what is repeatedly selling, then you can break those out maybe into their own listings to see if you can get more traffic just based on those keywords being more specific for that one thing that people are already looking for. And really deciding on what that feature is that people want is going to help you merchandise your shop better. It's going to help you make more products that people want because now you know what they're actually looking to buy. And it will give you more listings too. And we'll talk about that in a minute. A lot of people buy based on color. That's just what it is. And if we're talking about something like patches, and the example that this person in my Facebook group gave me was cheer patches for cheerleaders. Well, if you think about it, if I'm buying cheerleading patches for a kid of mine who's a cheerleader or for the team that they're on, it's going to be based on color. Okay, if the school colors are red and black, I'm not going to be buying green and white. If the school colors are green and gold, I'm not going to be buying blue and gold. So breaking those out by color and just having one listing per color per patch, you can then have variations that are not as complicated. Something else that I wanted to mention, I looked at a few different types of products. When I looked at what's actually selling in their shop, that's not the majority of their sales. So let's say I have this one listing that says bestseller on it because I've sold it 5 times. I could have 50 other listings that have sold in the same time as that one. Each of them has sold 4 times, but they're not 5 times, so it's not the bestseller. But each one of these is just a single listing for one specific thing. And that's a lot of what I was seeing. I was seeing that a lot of the shops that have a bestseller badge on specific listings that have tons of variations were actually selling a lot more of other things that had no variations at all. They were just a supply. They were not customizable, or they just had one choice of color or something like that. The fewer choices you give people, the better. Because every time you throw a choice at a customer, that's friction and it makes them slow down and have to think. And we don't want people to do that. We want them to look and click and put it in the cart and buy it. And like I said, this is just basic merchandising. You want to minimize people's choices. You want to show them what they want. And you want to show them clearly in the picture so they don't have to wonder, is this going to look the way that I think it will? Oh no, I know what it looks like because it's right here in this picture. The other thing that I mentioned is this gives you more listings in your Etsy shop overall. And I think that a lot of times people are trying to cram things into one listing so that people will know that everything is there. But you can put things in, you can put a photo in the listing photos that says available in more colors, check the link in description, and then put a link to that section of your shop, or do a search in your shop for cheerleading or whatever it is. And that will bring up a link that you can put in your listing descriptions. And when people click on that, they can see everything in one search result because it's now all in your shop. The other piece of this, I think, is probably that people are trying to save money by cramming everything into one listing because they're thinking, oh, I only have one 20-cent listing to pay for now. It's only going to cost you, let's say you do 50 listings with 50 different variations, 50 colors, 50 fonts, whatever you decide is the most important. 50 listings only cost $10 on Etsy. So for $10, you can do this experiment and you're going to have 50 new listings that you already have pictures for. You've got pictures of them, I hope, in the original listing. You have some at least. And you'll be able to put those in your shop. That gives you more opportunity to be found in search just by sheer number volume. It gives you more opportunities to use different keywords. You're going to show up more if you have more listings. And if people are searching for specific things, your listings might show up 5 times on the search result page instead of just once. The other argument that I think probably people have is that if you put everything in one listing, then that listing that sells and sells over, all the stats will go to that listing and it will get a bestseller badge, or it'll get a higher quality score. Possibly, but also remember that I've tested this in my Etsy shop multiple times. I've tested it on my website, and every single time that I broke those listings out into separate colors. So instead of having one listing with 20 colors, I had 20 separate listings with one color each. Every single time I tested this out, my sales of everything went up. So you might be making less money than you think because you're trying to funnel everything into one listing that has way too many variations and it's scaring people away. If you keep things simple for customers, they're much more likely to buy from you, and you might make more money in the long run, even if you don't have as high a quality score because everything is funneling into one listing. And honestly, this is a very cheap experiment to run. So like I said, if you have a listing like that where you have a ton of variations, don't change it, leave it there, but add the other ones individually. Figure out what's the most important selling feature. Why are people looking for this? Is it the color? Is it the font? Whatever it is for your product. And make individual listings focusing on that feature and see what happens. It's not going to hurt. It can only help. And you might find out that people really like one or two colors and the rest, not so much. You might be able to figure that out already based on what's selling with the variations that you have a million of. But if you have colors that nobody ever buys, then, keep listing it for 60 cents a year. That's not expensive. But having the separate ones where people do buy that color much more, you will figure out really quickly which colors are the more popular ones, and you'll be able to develop new products from that, and you'll be able to do much more with that information than you would with just having one listing that's got everything buried in it. All right, so give this video a thumbs up, leave me any questions, and I will talk to you later.